Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Common Hiring Challenges and What You Can Do About Them, presented by TriNet. My name is Patty Montoya and I'll be your moderator today from the Early Growth team. I have a few quick notes before we get started. The webinar will last about an hour and that includes time at the end for questions. So feel free to type your questions into the control panel and we will answer them in between slides or at the end. The next thing to note is that this webinar will be recorded and sent to all the registrants with the slide deck within 48 hours. You can also find the recording and all of our recordings on our YouTube channel, Early Growth. Now, before I pass this off to our speaker today, I'd like to tell you a bit about Early Growth. This is a quote from our founder, David Ehrenberg, and a few of the clients we've worked with. And here's a quick description of what we do. We are an outsourced finance and accounting firm. We work with early stage companies, helping them with everything from day-to-day accounting to financial forecasts to taxes and valuations. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelist, Ed Cody from TriNet, who will tell us a bit about himself and kick off today's discussion. Ed, it's all yours.
Thanks, Patty. Hi, everybody. As Patty said, my name is Ed Cody. I'm at TriNet, super excited and thankful to be invited by Early Growth Financial to speak today on this topic. This is kind of a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I've been in the human resource and benefits space since my first job out of college. I won't tell you how old I am, but let's just say close to 100, it feels like. I've been doing this for a long time, and all kidding aside, I have never seen a more difficult and more challenging landscape for employers than what we're facing today. Businesses of all sizes are facing significant challenges when it comes to hiring. Staffing is, just a real challenge. It's placing a lot more of a burden on employers. And so today, what I'd like to do is knowing some of the challenges with it, share some of the kind of workarounds or ideas or best practices, things that I've seen some of the best employers use and leverage to overcome the challenges in today's job market. So we'll talk a little bit about, pretty simple agenda, but we'll talk a little bit about the importance of hiring and then some observations or kind of some key takeaways, some of the points that we've seen. And then we'll kind of share best practices. But what I didn't put on the agenda, I want to make sure to bring up to everyone is, if there are questions, please, as Patty said, raise your hand, type into the screen or the dashboard a question, or I'd be happy to follow up after today's presentation. TriNet serves an awful lot of companies here in Silicon Valley and across the country. Our consultants are specialized in a number of verticals and really have great domain expertise. Technology companies, life science companies, financial services, professional services. We've really been working over the last few years to train and dedicate and develop our team of consultants to really bring value to the clients that they work with. Again, in those kind of key industries or key areas. So I put this in, like a huge font because it's a really important thing to think about as you're thinking about hiring and growing your organization. The talent that you bring in, that next hire that you bring on board will either move your culture forward, they'll support your company, they'll support your vision, they'll get it, there'll be a net positive add to the culture of your company, or there'll be a detractor. There's really no gray area. So, I want to make the point, you can't overstress enough that every single hire that you make is absolutely essential to the growth, the direction, and the success of your company. pretty shocking statistic I read in the Harvard Business Review recently, that a super high percentage of turnover in an organization can be attributed to a poor hiring process. Now, I'll go into some more of the details around that, but great talent, comes into an organization or it doesn't. I was speaking on a panel last week, and I just asked the audience, how many of you have been in that final interview step, or that, the final meeting to present the job offer, only to have the candidate no-show. Every single hand in the audience went up. And again, back to the point I was making at the beginning, I've never seen that. I've never seen the number of people ghosting interviews or job offers as we are today. So a good hiring decision is really kind of every step of the process of engaging with that candidate, recruiting that candidate, and making them feel good about coming to that next interview or next step in the process. Poor hiring decisions have a huge impact. When I first started in the HR world, I think the statistic that everybody used was that a mishire, or maybe bringing someone on board who wasn't a good fit for the organization, cost about 2 times that salary, or the salary for that role. But I think a lot more accurate data has been gathered. There are a lot more data points available, and the analytics say that the cost is dramatically higher. It looks as though, by again, this Harvard Business Review that we took a deep dive into, that cost to an organization could really be more like 5x. And really, it's not just the process of finding a candidate and hiring a candidate, or the cost to interview. What it really boils down to is, when you bring someone into the organization who's not a fit or is a mismatch, they can impact the other employees. They could, if they're not capable, not competent, they don't have the skills needed to perform the function that you hired them for, there's a loss of productivity. They could also disengage other employees. They maybe, by their attitude, they actually turn off other employees. Hopefully they don't become like a talent repellent and actually chase people away, or chase away other good candidates. That you hear that, though. You hear that that's a horror story, and I've seen that happen kind of firsthand. So I want to make sure to emphasize that point, that a poor hiring decision has astronomical cost within the organization, and even if they aren't a talent repellent, they can have a negative impact because they just, they're not moving your organization forward. Finally, obviously it's kind of reinforced on the last sentence over there on the right-hand side, but culture is one of those kind of nebulous concepts that everybody talks about, and a lot of people spend an entire career dedicated to improving the culture of an organization. But I want to kind of tie that back to the comment that I made, that every single hire you bring into the organization either moves your culture forward or backward, and the engagement of other employees in that work group or in a small company and the entire organization are impacted. A lot of companies have kept that in mind, and I'll go into this in more detail later, but they've really started to engage other employees. In fact, maybe in a small business, all the employees in the hiring or interview process, to try to make sure they're coming up with a good fit. The point I was talking to with the smaller companies having an advantage, a founder, a CEO, kind of a leader, maybe the COO, some of the key employees in a small company, usually, and really, I think they need to think about it if they haven't been, they're really the key person, the key storyteller, the key one to articulate the value, the mission, the direction, the vision of the company. If that person's not comfortable, if they haven't had to do that before, that's something that, speaking to an HR consultant or speaking to someone who's been in that role before, maybe speaking to a board member who could coach them on how to deliver that message, is absolutely essential. It's so important for that new person coming on board to know where they stand in the interview process, to know what the next steps are, start to feel like that they get it. They're gonna know what they have to do on day one. That they know, maybe what some of the challenges are. Everything has been explained to them, and they feel good about it. That's a lot easier to do in a smaller organization than a larger company where there could be, different locations, different offices, more of a bureaucratic or multi-step interview process. It can be a little bit more complicated. The more people that are involved in it, the greater the span is as that process is working its way through. And this is an area that small businesses and medium-sized or mid-sized businesses really need to take advantage of. Having those evangelists or those really strong advocates who are great people in the organization to be involved in that hiring process, to feel proud and excited about engaging, and they want to bring on a good, talented, competent team member that's going to fit and that's going to help them do their work and help the entire company succeed. That's a great thing. And if as a founder or a CEO, a leader of a company doesn't see that person, doesn't have that person on the staff, well, that's someone that we've got to hire for. That's someone who we want to grow our team to encompass. That's someone who we want to make sure can be part of our team member. Because ultimately, I think getting someone in the hiring process or someone in the interviewing process that can take a certain step or take some of the ownership of that process. Maybe they've started to be groomed or developed in that area as a future potential leader. That's a great an important area to delegate and to help the organization overall. But it can't be taken lightly. It can't be done haphazardly. It really needs to be thought out and planned methodically. Okay, so now we'll talk about the kind of what all the data says, or kind of the 4 key areas. The hardest components, or I guess sometimes the things that no one wants to talk about. The biggest challenges to hiring, the biggest challenges to onboarding, and getting that next talented person in the organization. So Patty, let's go to number 1. Okay, so here's the thing you got to think about. I was talking about having that strong advocate or that strong kind of team member who is able to support and maybe mirror or rebroadcast that message, who gets the vision that the founders, the CEOs have, who wants to be a part of that, who wants to be a part of the success. That person needs to be in the interview process and able to articulate the values. Sometimes it's challenging, but a candidate coming to work, they want to know, and in a couple of the slides I'll get to in a few minutes, that understanding exactly what the culture is like might be impossible. It might be impossible, but the closer they can get to it, the more they can understand it, maybe hear it from a couple of people, but it validates everything that they've read online, whether it was on Glassdoor or LinkedIn or any other social media about the company. They need to see it. They need to know. And I think the more a founder, a CEO can engage other members of the team to help reinforce that, the stronger that interviewing, the stronger that hiring process, the stronger the engagement is with that candidate as they're considering your company as a place to come and work. The next one is a little harder. Oh, I'm sorry, Patty, will you go back? I want to touch on this one piece. Thank you. The perks and benefits at companies are essential. The data shows that, and in fact, I've seen it firsthand here at TriNet recently, where candidates sometimes simply cannot leave the position that they're in and come to that next company if the benefits and perks aren't there. And just to be specific about benefits, sometimes when you're hiring a person with some seniority or some talent or some experience in a certain area, they're not young. They might have a family, and usually when a person has other people in as they're considering that new role, they have other considerations. Maybe there's a prescription that someone in the family needs, or they have dental needs, or what have you. And I've overheard conversations with our clients about key employees that they want to hire who have certain needs when it comes to benefits. The challenge, and here's where kind of my empathetic side is on display. CEOs and founders, of small businesses and medium-sized businesses have to become like experts in, the benefits offering, and they have to understand a lot of crazy stuff, out-of-pocket maximums, a deductible, an in-plan physician, an out-of-plan physician, a co-payment, and how that works, and it's kind of a pain. So having an HR consultant who could take off, some of that required understanding is helpful. Because in that interviewing process, explaining the benefits and being able to articulate to a future candidate or to someone who's interviewing right now exactly what their benefits are on day one is essential. So 54% of candidates have to know those benefits, or they'll disengage in the interviewing process. And sometimes they want to hear from someone other than maybe the CEO or the founder or the person they're interviewing with. They want to know from other employees that they're going to talk to if the benefits are good, if the benefits are comparable to what they have currently. And that I think places a real challenge on a lot of small and mid-sized businesses, because not everybody in a company understands those. So anyway, thanks, Patty. We can go to the next one. I just wanted to be sure to make that point. So as I talked about earlier, having a couple people in the company who can articulate the values, the mission, that's good. I think there's an advantage for small and mid-sized businesses there. I think that the key part of that is if a candidate's interviewing with you, they're very likely interviewing somewhere else. So having the ability for yourself or that advocate, that team member to be able to explain why we're special, why our company is different, why someone would want to be here without the candidate feeling like it's a sales pitch, that's critical. That's challenging. That's difficult to do, but it's essential when you have an unemployment rate in some of the metros across the country that's at a 50-year low. So the opportunity to speak to that candidate or to engage that candidate might only come one time. And so the ability to explain what makes your company different is vital. And it might have to be practiced or rehearsed or reminded from time to time. Clarifying your vision and strategy, that's the kind of secret sauce that gets a candidate to buy into, the technology or the mission, what the challenge that we're overcoming as an organization, the disease that we're going to cure, and how we're going to do it is something that candidates need to buy into. They need to understand it, and they need to feel that they can see it, they can connect the dots, and they want to make this mission come to fruition. They want to make it happen. The final piece is, and this is a little more advanced, but there are a lot of candidates in the process right now who feel that they're interested in the current role that they're talking about, but what really makes it a fantastic offer is if they believe that there's a future opportunity, that there are additional roles, there's career advancement, there's growth and development within the company that they can look forward to. That's a little more nuanced, but something that, maybe if there are board members that you can consult with, or if there's an outside HR consultant, if there's someone to talk to, some of the best roles in your company might not have even been developed yet. And so the ability to talk about the growth and the direction, it kind of ties back and supports this conversation about a year from now, there might be roles in your organization that don't exist today. And that's exciting. That's growth. That's opportunity. And all employees that kind of join and buy in will have the opportunity to look for career advancement. All right. The second one, this one really shocked some people. I gave this presentation last week. It was it's kind of interesting. I think we had a deep dive on this slide more than any other. A lot of good conversation here, but the vast majority of candidates would consider leaving their job for a company with a better reputation. So this data came from LinkedIn, and it's very current. It's very recent data, but it's pretty amazing when you think about, you know, the reputation that a company has, because that's kind of like culture. That's one of those things that's a little bit difficult to get your arms around. So there are lots of great outside people that can help with this. There's social media, there are brand, you know, consultants and kind of marketing teams. And, you know, just I'll speak a little bit on this about, you know, I don't know if anybody who's listening has seen some of the cool stuff that TriNet is doing. We recently launched a People Matter campaign, because for our clients and for ourselves, you know, even, you know, the folks that I'm gonna hire to work on my team, I want them to become familiar with the brand. I want them to be aware of the brand. You know, TriNet isn't necessarily a household name. So when we saw this study, we took this to heart, and we've seen, you know, a lot of companies doing the same thing. So sometimes messaging isn't just awareness or focusing on some of the positive things you do for the external audience. It also matters and helps inside, and, you know, reinforcing what your company is doing, how you're serving your clients, how you're helping kind of deliver that mission and the vision of the leaders, where your company is going. Those kind of are building blocks to having that strong, solid reputation that a company wants to have. The other data point on the bottom of the slide is kind of shocking, but if the perception is out there, you know, that a company has a bad reputation, and I know everybody who's listening, everyone knows of a company that, you know, doesn't have the best reputation out there. And, you know, think about it from your own standpoint. If that company came to you with a job offer, you would turn it down. And it's kind of staggering, though, because sometimes companies are not aware of the reputation that they have. So I talked a second ago about building a better brand and what you can do about it, but this is a little more, you know, kind of big picture. Maybe instead of just thinking of that one employee who would be an advocate, or who you would bring into, you know, who you would bring into your interviewing process. This is really where the brand of the company is kind of every single employee would be aware of it. It's something that, you know, maybe at a company outing or any type of you know, team building or group get together or things that you do that kind of reinforce the brand of the organization, the brand of the company. Having everybody understand it clearly, everybody kind of knows the direction that you're going. It makes it easier to support positive improvement in the reputation that an organization has. Sometimes there are challenges, though. Sometimes that, you know, something goes wrong. When that happens, the companies that stand up, the leaders that step forward and take ownership for it and don't try to bury it or they, you know, they don't try to dodge it. Employees and clients or potential clients have an awful lot of respect for an organization who will face the music and talk about the ways they're trying to make the situation better. And we've all seen those. And, you know, the last thing anybody wants is some short, you know, video or piece on social media that's negative, that shows where a company wasn't being entirely candid with steps that they were taking to try to improve their brand or frankly, the service that they deliver. So having honest conversations, maybe doing an employee engagement survey. You know, there are lots of vendors out there that provide these are really, really powerful. You know, there are anonymous surveys. One of our clients, Glint, provides a great employee engagement survey. I think you could use something as simple as SurveyMonkey, but getting anonymous feedback and you know, then kind of assessing it, facing it head on, and talking about the challenges, the ways to overcome it, the teamwork required, that the organization is going to step up and get everybody engaged and moving forward or resolving the conflict challenge. that speaks to brand. People can buy that. That's a great story, especially, 6 months later, a year later, when someone says, hey, we had to face this head on. This was terrible. Our clients were really upset. This did not work. And here's what we did about it. And that becomes a great part of a company's, not just their history, but their culture going forward. And then finally, I mentioned having those super engaged employees who are kind of a disciple or a brand ambassador. I'm not sure all the right terminology to use there, but actual employees as the face of the company internally and in social media makes it very personable, makes the company something that more people can relate to. And you may have employees on your team who want to take more of an active role, maybe promoting or sharing success stories or things that they're doing with clients or things that they're doing with the company. This is a great opportunity for that employee to take on, maybe a developmental opportunity within the company, something that they can kind of get engaged in and take ownership for. But it can't be taken lightly. It can't be done haphazardly. It shouldn't be done without a lot of thought and planning. But finding an employee on board who can be that ambassador can absolutely help move the culture, the reputation of a company forward. The scary thing is, I don't know if anybody's used Glassdoor, but even if you're not necessarily using Glassdoor for the positions that you're hiring for, a candidate, a client could leave a review. And so there are lots of opportunities to kind of look at those and be aware of them. And then, I think communicating or even over communicating about some of the things that are going on that could have affected that negative review are essential, kind of addressing it and understanding it. So when you have employees who are going to be meeting with a potential candidate, do they understand and are they comfortable speaking about, the training or some of the developmental things that are going on? A lot of companies can invite candidates to come in for coffee or maybe meet up for lunch or come to the job site and get to interact with individual team members and entire company. And that first impression that an employee has when they're coming through, or if they go on a ride along or they shadow an employee, those are super powerful in creating in their mind an image of that company and kind of conveying what it's like on the inside and helping them feel good about deciding to come to work for you. Teamwork and morale, this is a great thing, and it's something that can be not just specifically focused on improving the culture or improving the reputation. They can also be a lot of fun. I think there are lots of companies that we've all seen do community events or volunteering and tried to make the most of those so that they're fun, team building or kind of morale building opportunities. And then also there seems to be an awareness of the need for a work-life balance. It's really difficult to achieve, I think, in today's society, but there are companies that do a really good job of listening to their employees about, maybe working from home at different times as they see fit. I recently was talking to a CEO who said they were seriously considering having the day after Thanksgiving as a paid holiday. And they were having an open conversation about it, and they said, because to be honest, it's not a super productive day anyway. And so there was some conversation, and I think they were having they had a group of employees kind of volunteer to be spokespeople for other teams within the company, and they could kind of vet that out and see if that would be a net positive for everybody in the organization, because then they could kind of publicize it. And they could say, hey, based on feedback, we thought this would be important for our employees to be able to spend more time with their family after Thanksgiving, and without necessarily taking a day off for PTO. So having those kind of conversations, regardless of what's decided, those conversations can be great for engagement. And who knows? Sometimes they could reinforce the work-life balance that we all strive for. Thanks, Patty. Okay, so I apologize. I know this slide is a little bit of an eye chart, so it's kind of kind of hard to look at. So I won't read, all the stuff on the slide, but I will say, and kind of jokingly, anybody out there who's playing buzzword bingo, I'm going to say millennial, because I feel like every webinar that I listen to or every presentation that I see, someone at some point has to say millennial. Well, here's why. Millennials are the largest demographic or age band, I guess, in our work groups or working adults today. And so, not every organization has leaders that are millennials or necessarily have kind of worked with millennials in the workplace before. So knowing a little bit more about millennials in the workplace is super important for engagement and morale and hiring. Like if your message has to resonate with the millennial audience. So there's a million data points on this slide, and I'd be happy to share some of the analytics that TriNet has gathered over the years on this topic. But understanding the age and the desires of your current workforce and your future candidates is essential. It's not easy, and so this I think this slide tries to illustrate it's kind of confusing because every generation or every work group has certain things that they love about the work environment that they have or they detest. And a new manager coming in or when they switch to work for a new company, that kind of change to a new style of communication or a new style of feedback or performance reviews could be just a really challenging thing for them to get used to. So future hiring managers or leaders need to spend some time and be aware of how those interactions, how those communication patterns, maybe the kind of future goals or career development needs that different work groups have or the different generations have is really essential, really important to becoming a great leader that's going to have engaged folks on their team and be able to hire that next rock star. This one is kind of glaring, so I put this in much bigger font. So and I'll only touch on a couple of those, but everybody on this, everybody who's listening can certainly read these, but I'll only touch on two of them. Back to millennials, like I was saying, whether this is terrifying or not, it is a fact that today millennials average 2 years in their current role. So what does that mean? Does that mean that, a millennial who's on your team started, a year and a half ago, and then in 6 months, they're going to get bored and start looking around? I don't know. I mean, possibly. I don't really know. If someone's hitting their 2-year anniversary, does that mean they've got resumes out there and they're thinking of leaving? I don't know. I do know, though, that if that is a valid data point, and this is like tens of thousands of candidates that we've or workers that we've done some research on. If millennials are approaching their 2-year anniversary, I would hope that they're really engaged. I would hope that they've been really excited and enthusiastic and part of the workforce and feel like this is somewhere where they see themselves being successful. They see themselves a year from now wanting to be part of the team, wanting to drive the organization forward. And a quick piece of that, like I've mentioned on the last slide, how, delivering feedback or, those kind of interactions and some of that communication, the millennials that I've heard from many employers really appreciate immediate recognition, immediate kind of on the spot feedback versus a very formalized, 6 months or 12 months performance evaluation or super formal, uncomfortable, sitting across the desk from each other, kind of isolated and very almost, sterile, kind of a awkward awkward situation. So does every manager in your organization, is every leader of people comfortable pulling someone aside and saying, hey, this was a really important, key absolute interaction that you had with the customer. And from what I could see, I noticed these things. Giving that immediate on-the-spot recognition or feedback is essential. It's so vital. And I think other demographics in the workplace appreciate that, but millennials are known for being the most vocal about, hey, don't wait until the end of the quarter to have this kind of conversation. Let's talk about it now, because I not just want the praise, but if there's an opportunity for me to improve, I want to hear it. I want to know about it right now. Knowing that on the slide, one of the things I skipped over was, if millennials have an entrepreneurial spirit, if they want to start their own business, is that something that them being part of your organization, could that be supported? I talked a little bit about that. If you have that employee who could be an advocate for the organization, is there an opportunity for them to take responsibility or take more of an active role in promoting the company on social media? Could they view that as kind of their own division, their own mission, their own kind of project that they could run? Would that satisfy the entrepreneurial spirit or desire that so many millennials are known for having? It's possible, and if being an advocate for social media isn't that the best outlet, well, let's look for a way to engage. And you don't have to build a role around the person. That's not it. You got to look for roles that are going to support the organization first, and then if someone is open to raising their hand and maybe taking a stretch assignment, looking for a way to engage them in doing that helps keep an employee looking for ways to grow, ways to develop, and that we've seen that from a few surveys that can be really a great way to kind of align with an entrepreneurial desire that many millennials are known for having. Promoting different learning opportunities across the company. There are a ton of vendors out there that have great content for learning, and there are some really amazing, like just kind of expensive, but these performance or learning kind of vendors that can come and that's their entire single solution is they'll come to a company and say, hey, we've got this thing on demand, and your employees can learn from these courses. Not everybody wants to learn that way. There are a variety of other ways that people can learn things, and maybe it's something as simple as learning something kind of new or how to operate a newer piece of technology. Maybe it's simply something on one of those team building activities. Learning how to do something differently that employees have never really had a chance to practice, getting out of the office or getting out of the workplace, doing some team building, but also having the opportunity to learn it's a great way to stimulate some creativity. It's a great way to stimulate some conversations, some one-on-one interactions with coworkers. But the main thing to take away from that point is that learning opportunities are appreciated by every employee in every age demographic from all the data that I've seen. And then finally, the thing I talked about was providing on-the-spot or immediate feedback. That really is something that needs to kind of cascade down through the company from the leadership at the top. Knowing that millennials, again, are such a large part of the workforce, that's something that there will be negative feedback on or from millennials who are only getting that kind of feedback or performance evaluation at too distant intervals. And let me just put a footnote here at this point in the presentation. There are lots of kind of pitfalls to delivering feedback. If there is some developmental feedback or feedback that could be a little bit negative or lots of areas for improvement, that's an art. That is a difficult thing to deliver, especially when someone's maybe new as a leader, new as a manager, has never had to provide that kind of feedback before. The good news is there are lots of people out there who can consult or who can help having what I saw one one piece of content on that was called having a courageous conversation. I've seen others where, you know, that there are consultants who can say, hey, let's spend 30 minutes, we can role play how to deliver this feedback. This is essential for this employee to improve in their role. We've got to upskill them. We've got to help make them better. If they're going to be doing this for our organization moving forward, achieving the aggressive and exciting and lofty goals that we have, we can't have someone in this role that can't do these things. So practicing that and making sure that the people who have to deliver that feedback or that kind of performance evaluation are trained and comfortable and don't avoid it. It is so important to delivering the feedback, making the improvement, but also staying engaged with that employee. So this is the last one. So I appreciate everybody sticking with me this long. This is the final truth, and really, in my mind, I think probably one of the most important ones. I'll let you read what's on the slide, but we talked earlier, I think, that Harvard Business Review study that so much turnover can be attributed to poor hiring process. Let me just put a really fine point on it. Hiring is very difficult. I've met tons of leaders who have said that they've hired someone based on gut instinct. Man, just had the best interaction. We just clicked, just looked like a fantastic fit. It was awesome. And then 3 months later, that very same leader has a 180-degree change, completely different view of that person. And I talked earlier about how damaging a mishire can be to the organization on so many levels. So the main point here is hiring is just a critically difficult thing to do correctly. The good news is there are trainings available, and I'll share that in a second. But the second point on the slide is, and this isn't the cost, that 5X. I'm not repeating myself completely. The companies lacking a standard interview process are a lot more likely to make a bad. So, I've been there. I've seen it firsthand. Small and medium-sized businesses have new kind of what they call like a battlefield promotion, where maybe there's a new manager in the role and working on a timeline. There are certain key milestones and we've got to achieve those. So we're going to promote this person. They're going to become a manager and they're going to hire some folks. Well, not everybody who's going to be in that hiring role, in fact, saying this probably a little sarcastically, not everybody's been trained. A lot of managers haven't had any type of formalized training on, some of those really key aspects of hiring, the right questions to ask. Now, I should put a footnote here. I don't mean the right questions to ask from a compliance standpoint, but yes, in most states, you can get in a lot of trouble if you ask the wrong questions in an interview. There are lots of things you shouldn't talk about in an interview. It's not appropriate. It can only work against you. Now, not every manager has even been trained on those. And that scares me, because there's a just giant liability for an organization when managers are not trained on questions that they cannot ask. On the opportunity standpoint, though, thinking about questions that you can ask and should ask, you can work with an outside HR consultant who could come in and train your managers. These are good trainings. These are not like something that take years to develop. These are bite-sized pieces that set a schedule or a series of trainings. A couple really popular ones are like on behavioral-based interviewing. Those are incredibly powerful, and they bring consistency to the hiring process. They'll help managers ask the same questions again and again and again. They'll get more comfortable with the interviewing process, and then hopefully we won't see negative reviews on Glassdoor about the hiring process. And I don't know, I can't tell if anybody listening to this right now is on their phone maybe looking at Glassdoor. There are negative reviews that I've read about companies where a candidate has said, gosh, this manager didn't know what they were doing. And that's not a good way to build the brand, build the culture, or create that kind of positive reputation that your company wants. The good news is, on the next slide, there are some things you can do about it. Okay, so first and foremost, let's think about developing a very standard process for hiring. Getting an outside HR consultant to kind of work with a checklist, work on some specific, exact, absolute required competencies or skill sets that we have to have for this role to be effective. I have a lot of clients have talked about using like a kind of a survey almost, or like a DISC, personality testing before they hire someone. That you can absolutely. Some of those tests are they're valuable. They're kind of expensive, but they can be very helpful determining if someone has kind of what it takes to fit. But they're typically very role specific. So that's not something I would take lightly. If you haven't used kind of a personality or assessment test like a DISC training or DISC assessment before, I wouldn't go into that lightly. Knowing the requirements of the job and the requirements of the role, specific things you're looking for are more important as a first step. Then the second piece that I talked about before was getting other people involved. There are a lot of companies that believe in panel interviews or having a couple people in the interview process for you. Remember that the key part, the ultimate goal is getting that next superstar to join your organization, finding them and getting them to feel comfortable about coming aboard, asking them questions to make sure they're a superstar. It's not about, getting through it as fast as you can. It's not about, kind of reinforcing how great the company is and how lucky that person would be to work there. Remember that person ultimately has a very powerful kind of ability to write a review on social media or on Glassdoor about what they experience. So hopefully it can be a positive experience, even if you don't move forward with that candidate. But getting other people involved from the company and if they can really be trained, be comfortable, be engaging, be really kind of actively listening to the responses of the candidate and helping that candidate with open-ended questions, share more about their experiences, their outlook, what they want to do, their goals, their career goals, really engaging and making sure that we're getting all the information out in that process is a much, much more positive experience. The last piece on this slide I'll talk about is there's just with the tough labor market that we're in, you can't simply say, oh my gosh, we're hiring a person. Well, let's put an ad out there on a couple of the sites. Let's open up the sites for those requisitions. I think you have to have a recruiting process going on 24/7. You have to constantly be engaged with candidates. You have to constantly be looking for someone. Remember that slide that I showed earlier about candidates looking for companies with a positive reputation. If you have a candidate that you're engaged to and you're talking to, but they're not ready, maybe they feel a sense of they have some ownership of a project that they're currently on and they can't walk away from it. Well, they're conscientious. That's great. That's great. So stay engaged with them. Stay engaged with them, through the next so many months, as long as it takes. But the idea is that I can't, knowing that there's a role that's coming open today, or gosh, a month from now, I can't just wait till the last minute to start that hiring process. ABH, always be hiring. Always have your eye out for a great candidate. So I hope that wasn't too painful to go through. I don't even know how many, 18 slides or so. I'll try to, not bore anybody with a recap from start to finish, but I know how challenging it is. There are companies all over that have open recs that have been looking for and have been hiring key folks, trying to get them on board. Speaking of, the job sites that have those open recs, I was visiting a company just back in, well, last month, September, that had a couple of open positions that had been out there for like 4 months. You know, and these are key roles. So it's tough. I know it's challenging. So knowing that it's difficult, please, you know, give thought to this and give thought to some of the other resources that are out there. You know, if you can, like Early Growth Financial, you know, as a good partner, they have great talent that they can bring into your organization temporarily when you need that kind of help. When you think of TriNet, think of the ability to make your offer rich with the benefits that you want to provide, or frankly, that candidate may not even consider your offer without. There are resources out there. And finally, you know, speaking of resources, Patty will have my contact information. So if I can, or if any of the consultants on my team could share any information, some of the data that we've gathered, or frankly, just have a conversation with you, we'd be happy to. Really would look forward to answering questions as we can, or providing any type of value or resource that we have available.
Thank you, Ed, so much. Yeah, for everyone listening to this, Ed is a great resource. He's super happy to talk to anyone. I will be sending an email with our pitch deck and the recording of this webinar and his information. So if you want to speak with Ed, you can look at the email or just email him. Ed, can you repeat your email address just in case?
Absolutely. Sorry, Patty, I forgot. my email address is ed.cody, COADY, @TriNet, TRINET.com.
Perfect. Thank you all very much. And we will be having another webinar on common startup mistakes on October 22nd. I'll send an email with that information as well. Thank you, Ed, so much for all of this information. I think we're all good.
Thanks, Patty. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.